Good morning to everyone. Today is Tuesday. It is April 8th. It's about 5:12 in the morning. All right, I'm just trying to get back into the groove of doing these kind of things early in the morning. However, recently I've been able to sleep a little bit later than normal, which has been fantastic, but it kind of takes away from my time in the morning with no other noises and no work or whatever I have to do during the day. So, I'm able to do it today, and I'm very happy to do this today. So, it's been at least a month since I sat down and did a book review in front of you both you know, in a while. So I've actually got 4 books on the side of my table here that are just ready and raring to go. Although I do have a couple of notes to more make, but I just haven't been able to do it. I've been prioritizing other things in its place. So without further ado, let me talk to you about one of my latest accomplishments. This here is Gothic Fantasy, Chilling Ghost Stories, an anthology of new and classic tales. Okay? This book has a foreword by a man named Dr. Dale Townsend, which, of course, I did not read, and it's from Flame Tree Publishing. Okay? This has one of those, like, leather-bound looks to it as well, so it's going to look very nice on the shelf. Usually these kind of editions make me think of that section off to the side when you go to like a Barnes and Noble, right before you go into the queue for the cash registers. There's usually a huge section with these sitting there, on a little dais, just sitting there, and they're always some kind of classic. Okay, and one thing I have learned when I was doing some of my audio work originally is that a lot of those classics are actually in the public domain. So anyone with a printing press can just churn them out and sell them if they want to. No one owns the rights to them anymore, so you can just literally do whatever the hell you want with them. So it's a lucrative business to do that, just to have editions that, like this, would look nice on your shelf. Generally a lot of Easton Press editions are there, and they just look beautiful. This one has, it's regular black cover. It's got all these gold tints in it. And unfortunately, a similar thing happened to my first edition of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, my leather-bound edition, is it's wearing off. And that kind of happens sometimes with the way you handle it, when you hold the book, when you have it open with your hand there, and your natural hand oils have a tendency to take the cheaper type of stuff, just washing it off. So I try to take care of my books the best I can. But here we go. Page count wise, this is a 469 page anthology. Okay. And if you're not very familiar with those kind of things, anthologies are generally a collection of short stories. Okay. And this one takes that collection and puts it all together into one volume. However, this 469 pages of a tome is single spaced. Okay. It took me a while to read, because a 469 page single spaced edition is practically double that in a regular or normal book, so they really crammed a lot into this one here. I was able to pick this one up actually at a used book sale at a library nearby. I have their calendar of events, and about every 2 months they do a used book sale. And I had just moved into this neighborhood in early 2021, while COVID was a high priority in the area. And we still had social distancing, wearing masks everywhere, hell, people washing their mail. But as things started to open up again, the library had their first available used book sale, and I was all set to be there. And it wasn't until later, when I began to read this edition, that I found something pretty interesting. Someone gifted this to someone else and left a little inscription on the inside of the book. And that inscription reads, October 2020. Dear Don, happy birthday 2020. A year to remember or maybe forget. but we can never forget you. Happy birthday, love, Dee and Charlie. And I got to assume that it was Dee that wrote this because there's like hearts in the middle of the text. So one thing I thought was funny about that, besides it being, a heartfelt, inset that someone put in there, is it's dated October 2020. Okay, and here I was picking it up at a used book sale not 1 year later. So I guess it took 1 year for someone to get the book, possibly read it, and then toss it into the library's donation bin. I guess Don wasn't very appreciative of someone giving him a book and inscribing inside. Or who knows? Maybe Don took down with COVID and he's no longer of the world, and his family was appreciative enough to toss all his books to the library for sale to anyone else who would want it. I don't know. It's not my story to write. So, moving on. So this anthology itself is filled with 43 ghost stories, okay? And they're all set in a mix of time frames. They go from ye olde England to modern day, and to one or two being like in a different time and location. They're timeless because they're not of Earth. They're just fantasy filled enough to be elsewhere. And along with some truly classic tales in here, pardon me, classic tales like Edgar Allan Poe, things like the story of the monkey paw, the legend of Sleepy Hollow with Ichabod Crane. And besides those, there are some few gems in here that are modern tales. So it's an interesting mix that comes together. So, as I wet my beak, what are these short stories that we have on here? I'm going to go through them. I'll even list them down below in case you ever search and find them along the way. The first one's called Stay Away from the Accordion Girl. And yes, my notes are above the camera right now. From Jonathan Balog. And from what I can see, there's like a gay couple on retreat and they have relationship problems. They stop at a farm/inn, and a man sees a short girl with an accordion, and she slaughters livestock, and the families just don't care that she does that. They just burn the carcasses the next day. And the couple is warned to stay away from her. And of course, the one guy doesn't, and he kind of gets lured by her siren song. Again, I try to keep these descriptions as spoiler-free as I possibly can. The next is The Man Who Went Too Far by E.F. Benson. And this one man gets lost in the beauty of a forest, and he gets healed and elevated by the nature's energy, which of course is going to be ghostly in a way. Number 3 is Audio Tour by Trevor Boelter. And a kid is literally on an audio tour of Alcatraz, but his audio tour starts speaking to him, and he follows the instructions, and he finds the body of a dead escapee who never got out. So he finds the bones, and he tosses them to the sea as if the person actually did escape. And then the voice kind of stays with him as a guide for the rest of his life, whenever he needs him. It even helps him a few ways here and there. There's The Messenger by Robert W. Chambers. This is skulls found by the beach near a castle. Again, going back to the ye olde kind of thing. There's 38 skulls, including one of them, which is a black priest. Not an African-American priest, the dark priest kind of thing that haunts. And it haunts the family as a curse throughout the generations. Number 5 is Ghost Farm by Zach Chapman. A menagerie of ghosts for sale. Those that don't want in on the deal might become part of the next batch of ghosts. I like this story. This story was actually really cool. Number 6, Mrs. ZANT and the Ghost by Wilkie Collins. Victorian crap. Old woman in a rest home, brother-in-law who wants her in there. There's a family dynamic that goes on here, blah, blah, blah. Number 7, this is kind of like Nordic in a way. The Return of Gunnar KITTILSON by Vonnie, Winslow, Crist. And this spirit of Draugr rises, and he protects the family and their lineage. Flaming Fuses by Donna Cuttress. It's a ghost story of a lighthouse keeper. I like lighthouses. I think they're pretty cool. Number 9, The House, the Garden, and the Occupants by Amanda C. Davis. A purchaser of a new home finds a ghost who's trapped in some kind of like midnight loop. So he's trying to find a way to actually free the ghost from this every night haunting and let them get on to the next world. Number 9 is The House, the Garden. No, that was number 9 already. Number 10 is The Signal Man by Charles Dickens. And this is where a train signalman is haunted by a ghost train and a message of danger. Now, why can I not speak today? A train signalman is haunted by a ghost train and a message of danger. One which he cannot tell if the danger is real or if it's actually one of his own delusions. Number 11 is The Victorians by James Dorr. And this one is a boy inherits a home after he's married. And he doesn't remember his childhood at all, or the night his mother died. Then he's brought through those memories slowly as he makes his way to the attic. And then the question arises, was he the killer of his own mom? Number 12 is The New Catacomb by Arthur Conan Doyle. This actually was a pretty cool one itself. Shows you an interesting way to kill a fellow archaeologist. You can trap him in your new find. The Mourners by Kurt Blachard. Decent enough. A woman haunts mourners for the deceased. And there's even a great quote here that I've dog-eared in my edition. Attend not a corpse unless he be invited. Number 14, The Figure on the Sidewalk by Tim Foley. A man is obsessed with a paranoid delusion that someone is following him, and he tells his tale to a friend, who now thinks he is being followed. Think of like the movie It Follows, but dumber. Number 15, The Shadow on the Wall by Mary Eleanor Wilkins Freeman. Brothers fight. One dies the next day. Mysterious shadows on the wall. Nothing really happens. The next one, The Wind in the Rosebush, also by Mary Eleanor Wilkins Freeman. A woman goes to pick up her dead sister's daughter after the husband had remarried. She doesn't seem to be around, and there's a rose bush out front whose significance is not entirely explained much at all, in my opinion. Number 17 is The Overcoat by Nikolai Gogol. A longer short story about a stingy man who never spends money on his clothing. He wears a coat in Russia, but it's like threadbare, Eventually he gets this new and brilliant coat, and within a week, he's mugged and dies. And now he's haunting for his new coat. The Waiting Room by Philip Bryan Hall, also one I liked. Random people waiting in like a train depot for the next train, but they don't know how they got there. They don't know when the train is coming or where it is going. Number 19 is Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Just your classic story of the Headless Horseman and Ichabod Crane. Follow that is The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. Again, a classic. However, this was simply wishing the dead back to life and using the remaining wishes to undo the abomination before it comes home. So unlike other monkey paw stories that have come out since this one is very specific, and all 3 wishes are all done about the exact same thing. Therefore, concise. Number 21 is The Altar of the Dead by Henry James. Ghosts in a church, which I found very boring. Another thing which makes reading things like this take forever. Calmagus by M.R. James. And it's a ghost story about an author of a travelogue. Lost Hearts by M.R. James, where a man adopts young children because he wants to use them in a ritual that will infuse him with life with their blood. And of course, some of these dead children are now ghosts, talking to the newest one. Lost Hearts by M.R. James. Nope, just said that. Again by M.R. James is The 5 Jars. And this is a whimsical tale about a man who finds a box with 5 jars in it, and each jar is labeled for one of your senses. And every night he tries some of the goop in the jars, and a magical world kind of comes about to him. The moonlight plays a big thing with this story because it kind of illuminates runes on the jars in a way. But as he's going through this over the course of a week, doing one at a time every night just to see how they individually react with him, there are things out there trying to break into his home and steal the jars for themselves. And then he kind of gets help from these invisible little people. So, an interesting little tale there. Number 25 is The Authentic Narrative of a Haunted House by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. And this is a fun tale about a ghost that renters find around every day. And there's a murder mystery involved with this whole story, too. The next one is A Spirit's Whisper by Joseph Sheridan. Oh, same guy, Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. And a man hears a whispers and follows what those whispers say, and he uncovers a murder. 27 is The Englishman in St. Louis by Raymond Little. This is a man in St. Louis who picks up a girl. She happens to be dead, and she happens to be a ghost. Number 28 is Death in Champagne by Luke Murphy. It's another one I highly rank in this book. And it's more of a scientific research lab trying to create a device that might travel through dimensions or maybe even through time. And it somehow creates this time loop ghost story. I wish there was more to this story to actually as far as page count was concerned, because it was quick and concise and I wanted more of it. Next is The Mystery of the Semi-Detached by Edith Nesbit. And this is a bicyclist, a guy on a bike. He's going home and he sees an open door to a home and he investigates. And inside he finds the corpse of a young woman. Lost Souls by Jeff Parsons. This one got darker than most of them. It's a nautical ghost story about a German U-boat. And the sailors are violently taken by an unseen force while aboard the submarine, which is dangerously low on provisions and ammunition. And as their searches become unsuccessful, they start hearing clanky in some almost sealed up sections of the boat, and they find the bodies rent inside in ways that just truly could not be done by human hands. The Skeleton Crew by Michael Pincus. Okay, another story I highlighted here. Halloween. And a woman gathers a group of children, puts them all in the same costume, and takes them out of the town in some suburb or whatever else. And each house that they go to, the owners of the house are very reluctant to open their doors. But there's some kind of ritual that's going on here, the way the kids say trick or treat, the way they have to give them the candy, the way they thank them and go away. Even though it sounds very normal, it's done very hesitantly, because it kind of tells you there's some rules about this event. And in the rules, both parents must come to the door and offer the candy to these children. And they are frightened out of their wits. And somehow this woman is in charge of this, and she might need to pick a new child from among the homes to join her group, which will be back next year. It was a good story. Number 32 was Ligeia from Edgar Allan Poe. Again, classic Edgar Allan Poe. And this is one in which, after reading this, I think I might record and put on this channel. A man's wife dies, and after her death, he remarries to another. And she dies. And while he stays with the body overnight, the body slowly rises and transforms itself into his first wife. The next is The Black Cat, another Edgar Allan Poe. Kind of similar to The Telltale Heart in a way, where a man murders another, and the Black Cat ends up causing his crimes to be undone. Pardon me. Songs for the Lost by Ryan Rapata. I have a lot of notes on this one too. It's an odd one. People dine. No, they don't dine. They die. People die in the village, and an angel of death actually comes to the home and sings songs for the recently deceased. And then they come back every year, and they kind of like memorialize the person who died on the anniversary of their death. And after having lost a child and a husband, this one mother comes and sees the angel coming for her loathsome father after he died, and she kind of like shoos it away. And by doing that, the father did not have the angel's songs upon his death, and it causes her a poor reputation in the town, and she just gets no rest. And the angel starts no longer visiting her home. And then one year, she pleads for the angel to return. And it brings her on a spiritual journey that she has to actually meet and make a deal with death to regain her lost happiness and have the angels resume coming to her home. And that's one of the stories that I mentioned. It kind of takes place in another realm, another time, another dimension. That kind of fits the bill for me. An Unquiet Slumber by Rhiannon Rasmussen. This one was kind of a weird one. It's where a husband makes a golem for his dead wife to inhabit, because the wife, the spirit of the wife, is constantly talking to him, constantly nagging him. And he thinks, all right, if I give you a body, maybe you'll stop in my ear. You'll stop in my mirror when I'm shaving, all that kind of stuff. The next one is Almost by M. Regan. And the best I can remember, for me, this one was easily forgotten. There's a sickly boy, and there's a creature or monster in his vicinity. And I know he ends up like kissing with it and embracingly, lovingly with it, but reluctantly. And it's haunting him. Unfortunately, it's the best I can say about it. Next is The Bulge in the Wall by Ahmet Sekatat. If I said that right, I probably didn't. It's an interesting ghost story where a man rents a room in a poor neighborhood somewhere where the walls are extremely thin, and he begins to hear his neighbors talking through the walls. And there's a talk of a heist of the one man's wife's jewels. And it kind of turns into a ghost detective story. Number 38 is The Psychic Fair by Kathy Smith. And again, I like this one. This is where a woman sees dead people, and they appear at the most random times throughout the day or night, and even inconvenient times, like when she's in the shower. And she talks with them. Doesn't have a good time. It kind of like interrupts her life. But then she hears that a psychic fair is in town. So she goes there hoping that she might find someone that can help her. And then she's realizing that most of them are just charlatans to begin with. But she's able to come out of it. Then she meets an actual psychic that wasn't part of the fair but was nearby, that a ghost nearby who saw her seeing it takes her to in order to help her out. And then she kind of sets up business hours. And she learns how to like live with her gift. I know a lot of times is it a gift or a curse, but that's what happens here. Almost done here. Unclaimed by Lessa Pascavis Smith. Again, I apologize if I wrecked that name. And a man buys the corpse of the unclaimed body of a serial killer. Okay, he cremates it and hides the ashes in the walls of his home. And he wants his too young wife to go find the ashes, and if she does in the course of one night, he'll give her $50,000. And she doesn't want to do this. She was like, stupid games, I'm not here for your stupid games. And then she starts to hear voices of the killer saying, I know where my body is, I know where my ashes are, I can help you do this. So she decides to play the game and also to play a little game. Number 40 is The Bottle Imp by Robert Louis Stevenson. Again, kind of goes into the classic tale thing. This is where there's like a devil in a bottle that will pretty much grant whatever you wish. Okay? Think genie in a way, but it doesn't like you don't rub it and it comes out, whatever. It's just in the bottle, and the bottle cannot be smashed or destroyed. However, you can have whatever you wish, but if you die while the bottle is in your possession, you go to hell. So in order to get rid of it, you've got to sell the bottle to someone else and tell them the rules, but you have to sell it at a loss. You know, this bottle from way back when might have gone for millions and millions of then dollars, okay? Now, over time, people have gotten their riches and then tossed it off before they die with it in their possession and go to hell. So what happens, though, that over time, when you need the bottle to undo from something that you did before, and the last owner bought it for 2 pennies? The conundrum is, do I buy it for 1 penny, fix what I need to fix to the damnation of my soul? It's a pretty cool story, actually. The next is Bewitched by Edith Wharton. And this is, again, one of those ye old kind of tales. Townfolk are summoned to an old couple's home. And the old gentleman that's in there tells a story how he's seeing, as in also like seeing, the recently deceased young daughter of another townsfolk, whose husband, by the way, is one of the few who's summoned to the couple's home that night. So you have something going on here where there's a spiritual thing happening in the town, and other people are interacting with the spiritual things. It gets kind of soap opera-ish in its twisting relationship kind of way. Next one was an interesting one too, also by Edith Wharton, called The Bolted Door. And this is where a man believes that he's committed a murder. Okay? And one night over drinks, he tells his friend, he confesses to him the murder he did and how he did it and how he got away with it. And his friend doesn't believe him. He confesses to the police, and they don't believe him. And then the rest kind of snowballs and ends up with an interesting conclusion to it. And the final story in this is called The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. Also a classic story. And it's an amusing short story about a ghost in a castle in England that now Americans have come over and bought. And it's purchased by these Americans who just don't believe in ghosts. And the ghost tries to scare them in its own natural ways. But the funny thing is, they're not having it. And all the inhabitants of the home now scare the ghost, and the ghost can't get away. So it's again, it's very whimsical in how he does it, and I thought it was a great conclusion to the story, to the anthology of short stories. Okay, now I spent a whole bunch of times going through all stories. It's interesting to talk about a whole anthology in a collective. So, it's just, hey, I wanted to read a bunch of ghost stories, and I got to do it. I think they actually have another edition to this with all pirate stories too, which I was kind of interested in seeing if I can pick up one day. But I got a couple things out of this, which I will share with you. Number one, I like books of short stories, especially when they're like this, where they're alike themed. I know from what I've heard regarding the publication industry that they're generally not well received as far as sales are concerned. Unless maybe you're a specific type or a specific author. For instance, Stephen King can do books of short stories all he wants. So, but I think short story anthologies generally don't sell well, so you don't see them as often as you might think, unless, not exactly like this one here, but they're all in the public domain, in which case all you're doing is taking a whole bunch of free work, throwing in pleather binding, and getting it out there. But I personally like to see that widespread different details that happen throughout the realm of a like story. And like here, there's different aspects of ghost stories. You've got the curse of the family generations. You've got the Ghostbusters-esque sale of ghosts to other people. You've got the people who are just going mad because they're hearing voices, but the voices are trying to help them, or, hey, help me move on to the next realm by solving my murder or finding my lost whatever. So just the fact that you can hit different areas of the world or different areas of the mind, that's what fascinates me the most. And I'll give you two examples of this too. So take a novel like World War Z, for instance. Zombie apocalypse. Sure. But you get to see different areas of the globe and different settings on how they're dealing with it. So for instance, there's the short story about like the warriors, the soldiers who go to Afghanistan, and the zombie outbreak happens out there while they're there. And after a while, they run out of bullets and ammunition. So they start taking their little sand shovels and turning them into battle axes to help them battle them. You also get other stories in World War Z regarding the ghosts that are underneath the water. So even the people who thought it'd be a good idea to get on boats and go out into the water, hey, we're free of the zombies. Problem is, while zombies really can't swim, they don't need to breathe. So they could just be under the water and still be alive. So if you're on a boat and you have to come ashore to get, provisions and whatever else, you might have to take a raft up the beach. You might literally be in the middle of a bunch of zombies just below the surface of the water. So those kind of stories are taking, hey, here's a zombie apocalypse. Let's see it from a Midwest, almost cowboyish setting. Let's see it from a city setting. Let's see it from I'm a prisoner who's handcuffed inside a jail and I'm withering away and my cellmate's a zombie. And over time, if I'm still alive and he decomposes, what if his hand comes off his restraint and now he's free to come get me? So I love when that kind of happens. The second example of this is if you ever watch the Matrix movies, which are fantastic. They did one called The Animatrix, which was released between the very first movie and the second movie. And this kind of like had 9 cartoon stories that delved into the history of the machines and told one-off stories. Like there's actually one computer-generated short story that takes place and leads directly into the second movie. So it's almost like great for the continuity. And then there's other stories like, for instance, kids playing in a haunted house, which is actually a house that's got a glitch in the Matrix. So they can do things like jump off the balcony and not quite land on the ground. and they play games seeing whose face is going to come closest to the ground before they stop falling. Because they never hit the ground the way the glitch works. Or they take a glass bottle and they shatter it against the wall just to see it go back into a glass bottle. So it's just an aspect of the Matrix and seeing it from a street level. They even do more of those training simulations that happen too. So it's a wonderful part of the whole Matrix universe. So again, short stories that give you different aspects of the thing you are already interested in. That's number one. Number two, I believe I'm hard pressed with my new opinion. And that is, I am truly not a fan of the Victorian settings that many of these stories actually took place in. I always thought that ye olde English always seemed very aloof and pompous in nature with some of the characters in these settings. And while I know that the language of the time is completely removed from the language today, there's just something about the tenacity of the language that I'm just truly not a fan of. You know, it was always talking about people of society. These are the people that have these old buildings. They've got antique furniture around. It was even antique for them, not just for us. But there's antique furniture around. They have servants that is enough to have a tint of slavery in the air, and that never sits well in my soul. And when they have their little tea things, the condescending nature that they always talk to each other, you know, and things, the speech of the time was always backhanded, you know, like they were slapping someone in the face. And it's almost what they deserve for talking like that to people, you know, regardless of how elderly they were. It's like, listen, I understand that you got the money and we're all beholden to you, but you know something, shut the F up, you know, kind of thing. And it's the setting that I'm just totally not into. And I know that there's some women out there that I've actually talked to about this, that they love that setting, you know. But it's one of the reasons why I have zero interest in seeing Downton Abbey. So I don't care about that kind of stuff. And reading this kind of cemented that into my head. And now I've completed with this one. Again, it was many pages of single space. It took a while. But then I finally said, listen, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to finish this book. Because I do kind of on one of my shelves back here, I got a small section of the books I'm in the middle of reading. And that one was sitting there for a little bit too long for my taste. So I'm like, all right, let me accomplish this one. But I think I've come to the conclusion that perhaps old Don had the right idea. And this might be one that's destined to not remain on my bookshelf, despite the fact that it does look pretty with his gilded gold gild and the leather-bound pleather. But I might have to bring this to another used bookstore and send it off to the next reader. So that's my thoughts on this one. I know I'm not really saying much in this video. I kind of like went through half of this video was about me just telling you about the stories inside of it. But again, some of those stories are actually pretty interesting. I'm going to list them all in the in the description section below. If any of those descriptions were pretty decent for you, you could probably look it up individually online and find it somewhere. Or maybe if you don't find this specific book, like say in your library, you might be able to find that story in a different collection of short stories and find it online or whatever else. The ones who are classic tales, you most likely will find via Project Gutenberg online for free. Gutenberg, of course, being named after the Gutenberg Bible, the printing press area from way back when, is an area where all the works in the public domain are online at like Gutenberg.org or something like that, or maybe it's projectgutenberg.org. I'll put a link also down below. So you can actually find the classics out there very, very easily, and you can just read them real fast. But the other ones that are more contemporary, yeah, you'll probably have to find them other ways if the description was enough to pique your interest in order to go listen to them or read them. Okay, that's all I have for today. I'm at 40 minutes right here. I'm happy I got one of the 4 done. I will try to get the other 3 done this week, but we'll see how the week goes. the beginning of the month's usually pretty busy at work, so I log in earlier and have to work a little bit later. In any event, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thank you very much for listening. If you've made it this far, like, subscribe, blah, 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 you understand. All right. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.